I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and welcome to part 2 of the video series, The Pursuit of Happiness. You can find the link to part 1 in the description below. Chapter 3, Vita Activa. So why do our actions seem to belie what we say we want? Most working adults spend more time with their colleagues than their loved ones. Some of these people will tell you they will die for their families and friends if need be, yet may be too tired at the end of a workday to spend time doing things together with them. We may explain this away by citing how we need money to sustain our lives and our families, which is the reason why we devote so much time to our jobs. Here though is a thought experiment. If your and your family's needs are already all met and you are free to do anything, what is that thing? If you reply that it is your job, then you are in your sweet spot. If you, like many, fantasize about winning the lottery so you can throw your resignation letter in the face of your boss, clearly you are not enjoying your job all that much. Do you get an uncanny feeling sometimes that work cannot possibly be all there is to life? That your lot is a repetitive Sisyphean cycle of work, eat, sleep for 40 years till retirement, after which you are too frail and old to do anything worthwhile, and that all you have left is to wait till you die of sickness and if you are lucky, of old age? If it is, then what could possibly be the point of life? Surely we were not born to simply grow up just to serve corporations rarefied in the forms of bosses, be they bureaucrats or heartless capitalists. Some of you reading this may feel that such talk smacks of privilege. Such thoughts are only for those who believe they have a choice or alternative to a life of work drudgery. Indeed, if the basic necessities of life have not yet been met, there may be no point in trying to fulfill higher order needs and wants. Abraham Maslow writes, "The urge to write poetry, the desire to acquire an automobile, the interest in American history, the desire for a new pair of shoes are, in the extreme case, forgotten or become of secondary importance. For the man who is extremely and dangerously hungry, no other interests exist but food." He posits a hierarchy of needs where a state of excess is required for one to achieve the next tier in his hierarchy, a pyramid culminating in the need for self-actualization after the satisfaction of physiological, safety, love and esteem needs respectively. However, he is not suggesting that happiness can only begin when one is at the top of the hierarchy. Arendt explains that our labor can also be a source of happiness, indeed the most stable one. Arendt distinguishes between 3 types of activities corresponding to the Vita Activa, or the life of action: labor, work and action. Labor is what we do to produce the vital necessities that must be fed into the life process of the human body, she writes. A paradigmatic example of such a product of labor is food, which serves our bodily requirements so as to preserve our lives. The defining characteristic of the product of labor is that it is consumed soon after production. We labor to produce such consumer goods so that we can consume them in order to survive, so as to be able to labor again subsequently. The perishable quality of consumer goods means that they do not endure and cannot be directly saved. This cycle of labor and consumption follows the circular movements of our bodily functions, is endlessly repetitive, and the laboring activity does not stop as long as the subject is alive. Just to clarify, the reader should note that by consumer goods, Arendt is referring to goods that are literally consumed, such as food, and not goods bought by consumers, such as handbags or houses, which she would consider as a separate class of goods she calls use objects. Work, by contrast, has an end goal of creating an object. The activity of work ceases once the production of the object has been completed. An example of work is when one builds a house. Once that house is completed, she can stop her building activities since her aim was just to create her own house, and since that is done, the work can cease. The terms labor and work has become synonymous, but Arendt draws a clear distinction between the 2 activities. Building a house as a one-off effort for an individual is work, while building houses the way a professional house builder would do it day after day so as to earn his wages is labor. Contrary to Marx's account of alienated labor, labor for Arendt, while Sisyphean, is not sheer misery but possesses its own form of satisfaction. The blessing of labor is that effort and gratification follow each other as closely as producing and consuming, so that happiness is a concomitant of the process itself, she writes, giving rise to a lasting happiness which comes from the cycle of painful exhaustion and pleasurable regeneration. It is the kind of satisfaction we feel when quenching our thirst with water after laboring under the hot sun for many hours. Our thirst is sated for now, even though it will return again soon after. The satisfaction does not last for long, but it comes regularly, making it reliable, something that we can count on so long as we labor. Work, on the other hand, provides only an inevitably brief spell of joy that follows the accomplishment and achievement of its aim. Arendt's analysis presents two types of happiness. The first comes from our labor from a job well done, after which we can enjoy some rest and respite, where we replenish ourselves from the fruits of our labor, though we would soon have to begin again our laboring. Our labor keeps us alive, and there is a sheer bliss that arises from simply being kept alive through its activities. This happiness, while not ecstatic, forms a baseline for us to keep carrying on living. When lost, we experience a misery where exhaustion is followed by wretchedness, or an entirely effortless life where boredom takes the place of exhaustion and where the mills of necessity, or consumption and digestion, grind an impotent human body mercilessly to death. The second comes from work, where we create something longer lasting. When we complete our project of building a boat or even assembling a bookshelf, we may be happy in a more ecstatic way, but the feeling quickly fades and after a while completely vanishes. These two forms of happiness are not in competition, the same way labor and work are both needed, not in the sense of survival but for a complete life. Just as we need labor to keep our bodies intact and functional, we also need work to create a world of objects which may not be entirely necessary but still invaluable. For instance, my earlier example of work was to build a house. We do not necessarily need a house to live in. There are people who have lived for decades on the streets, or a tent, or in a cave, just like we do not necessarily need shoes to walk in, but it certainly makes walking on a hot road easier. She terms these products of work use items, which examples so far are houses, shoes, and bookshelves. Work and labor, however, are still only in the domain of material objects. There remains an important missing piece of the puzzle for a complete life, for Arendt, the most important component of the Vita Activa. While we can build a house, it does not make it yet a home. Arendt writes, "The man-made world of objects becomes a home for mortal men, whose stability will endure and outlast the ever-changing movement of their lives and deeds, only in so much as it transcends both the sheer functionalism of consumer goods and the sheer utility of use objects." Arendt does not define home in her essay, but I understand her intention of using that word not to mean a structure or building to merely live in, but a place where one can be safe, comfortable, can grow, develop and flourish in. Pretty much the ordinary sense of how people in Hebron understands the term home. She writes about a place that is stable and enduring, a safe harbor against the constant changes and movements of our lives. She thinks that for human beings to have such a home, it needs to be more than what usage things can provide, be it to satisfy our necessities in the form of consumer goods or to serve some function in the form of use objects. Arendt distinguishes between the human world and the world of things. Through work, we have built a world of things which endures and does give a stability to our lives. However, we also live among others in the human world, which entails a web of human relationships. To have a human world is to participate in the human world, and we do so through our speech and actions. Human beings are able to express their own individuality and can communicate not just how they feel, for instance by crying out in pain, the way some animals are also able to communicate. We can also convey our own uniqueness to other human beings using both words and deeds, which Arendt collectively terms action. Speech discloses who we are and informs others that we are the actors of our actions. Arendt examines the etymology of the word action through its Greek and Latin roots, explaining that to act in a most general sense means to take an initiative, to begin or to set something into motion. I act That is, I begin doing something which sets other things in motion, taking an initiative through my words and deeds. However, we live with others, linked in a web of relationships with these others. Each of them also have their own will and intentions, which may conflict with one another's. Hence our actions may not achieve their purpose, with the collision in wills and intentions making it unpredictable how things may turn out. For instance, returning to our father-daughter example, Peter, as a successful lawyer, wanted the best for Felicia. He pressured her into going to law school, even though Felicia had no desire to follow in his footsteps. She sought solace in her boyfriend's arms, became pregnant, and went into a hasty marriage that turns out to be a mistake, harming her life and her child's. Surely when Peter spoke and acted towards Felicia, he did not intend to hurt her, but because of their differing wills, things turned out not as they had expected. Chapter 4: Sovereignty. Despite this potential collision of wills, we need other people. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel writes about how we need the recognition of others to come fully into our own being. As social animals, we are beings in ourselves, but also beings for others. For better or worse, other people contribute to forming who we are. We understand our identity not only in an atomistic way, but also in an intersubjective dialogical way. According to Hegel, recognition is the mechanism by which our existence as social beings is generated. However, in seeking the recognition of others, we may also lose our sense of identity when we allow our unique personalities to dissolve in the expectation and norms of our society, becoming the generic Das Man that Martin Heidegger warns us about. We do not want to lose our identities and be just part of the masses, and we do not want to be reduced to an object which labels, which seem to have come into this world to be made use of and then discarded. We want to assert our humanity and be sovereign, where we act not for the sake of some other benefit, but for our own sakes. In our society of job holders, there is certainly a part of our wages that goes towards meeting our bare necessities so that we can stay alive. The question, however, is, what shall we do with the excess? What can satisfy us so that we can be happy? Georges Bataille, in Volume 3 of The Accursed Share, writes about sovereignty and the sovereign moment. To be sovereign is to enjoy the surplus, the excess that we generate and possess. What he means by enjoy is to be in the present moment and to do things for their own sake. If you were given a free holiday to your dream beach resort, but on condition that you cannot take any photos or tell anyone about it, for instance through social media, would you care to go? If you are unable to simply relish the beauty of your surroundings and enjoy the sound of the waves without having to tell your followers about it, then you are not in the moment. Do you go on a holiday to enjoy new surroundings and spend time with your loved ones? Or do you do it so that you can tell your friends about it? If no one knew, did it even happen? Does it count? Often we do things for the sake of a future moment. For instance, we carry out our jobs for the sake of the salary that comes at the end of the month. Instead, what if we can also enjoy the present moment in our jobs? If that is not possible, does it not tell us that something is wrong with our jobs or the way we go about doing them? We have been indoctrinated with the idea that for the sake of future success, we have to sacrifice the present, with folk wisdom like no pain, no gain. In Chinese, there is an aphorism, 先苦后甜. First, we have to endure bitterness in order to reap sweetness later. While it may be prudent indeed to sacrifice our current enjoyment for the sake of a future enjoyment or benefit, which is the very concept of wages and interest for savings, as a compensation owed for delayed gratification, the balance for some, indeed for many people, seem to have swung too far to the side of deprivation and sacrifice, such that whatever excess is simply accumulated to be enjoyed in some future that never arrives. Bataille critiques such a capitalist economic rationalism where wealth accumulation has become a primary fixation with its resulting inequality leading to conflict. There are good reasons to accumulate wealth, and then there are bad ones. Having some wealth, as noted by Hebron, can give one a sense of security which enhances happiness, where this wealth can come in handy for unanticipated emergencies and can give one a buffer, hence allowing one to take risks such as starting a business for which success is not assured. A bad reason is to just accumulate wealth for its own sake, where regardless of how much there already is, to accumulate some more. That is what Bataille calls the accursed share, where such an accumulation is cursed, since instead of bringing security and happiness, instead poisons those linked to it. Imagine siblings fighting over a massive inheritance to the point that it tears the family apart. It is a common tale, but if you need an example, examine what happened to the Gucci family. Here is a less common but true story. Imagine a person so wealthy that his grandchildren may be kidnapped. J. Paul Getty was the world's richest man, having made his fortune in oil. His grandson was kidnapped and Getty refused to pay the $17 million ransom, with the logic that if he did, it would put his other 13 grandchildren at risk of also being kidnapped. The kidnappers cut off his grandson's ear and sent it to Getty, after which he negotiated the ransom down to $2.2 million, which he loaned to his son to be repaid with interest. By the time the grandson was finally released, 5 months had passed. The trauma left his grandson with a drug and alcohol addiction, which led to a narcotic-induced stroke. He finally died aged 54. A film was made depicting this cautionary tale and was titled All the Money in the World. Indeed, what is the point of all the money in the world if it cannot be enjoyed or protect your loved ones? Imagine if the grandson was born to an ordinary family, how his life might have been. Does his life not seem accursed, where he was not blessed but cursed by his grandfather's wealth? Money is among the most useful of human creations, facilitating our trades with one another. Imagine having to bring a goat to exchange for a pair of shoes, and enabling us to save for the future. Imagine having to somehow store up perishable vegetables for a future trade to get shoes. But he has also become our bane. If we are unable to use our money to buy us goods and services that satisfy our needs, bring us comfort, give us security for our future, save the life of our loved ones, then what exactly is the money for? When money becomes the proverbial tail that wags the dog, we know we have lost the plot of our lives. I do not deny the usefulness of money. Money is indeed very useful, but we need to let our ultimate aims guide how we use that money. If our ultimate aim is our happiness, then once we have enough money to cover our necessities and some degree of creature comforts and savings for good measure and future security, what else should we do? What moves us, what is good for each of us, that gives us happiness, is different for each of us, though we have some things in common such as the desire to care for our loved ones, to love and be loved, and to be in good health. To consider what else makes us happy, let us return to the earlier thought experiment. If you have enough money to take care of your basic needs and secure your life, what else would you like to do? Whatever you have identified, should you not go do them? It bears explaining what is meant to do something for its own sake. For instance, middle-aged Greg enjoys music and thinks he can enhance his enjoyment for music by knowing more about it and be able to perform it himself. He has not learnt a musical instrument before, since his parents were not able to afford music lessons when he was young. He now has enough money to buy a piano and pay for classes. Should he do so? Clearly he will never be able to reach the standard of a concert pianist, even if he devoted the rest of his life to the study of music. There is little hope he will ever make money from it. Should he just forget about it? If learning to play the piano as a hobby will bring him some happiness, then obviously he should do it. Not for profit, not to show off to his friends, but for his own sake, for the sake of his happiness. It will not be all fun and games. Greg will struggle to read the notes, to control his fingers to hit the right keys in just the right way, and will need to spend time to improve his chosen craft. He will have to decide for himself whether it is worth it. However, for Greg to say that the time for him to learn has passed will be like what Epicurus had said, as noted in the preamble: no one can come too early or too late to secure the health of his soul. One final example. When parents give care and love to their child, do they do it in the expectation that their child will in future be a money-generating machine for them? Perhaps so, since they may expect reciprocation in future when they are old for their child to then take care of them. Let us fine-tune this thought experiment. Say the child is sickly and the doctor's prognosis is that he will not live past the age of 5. There is now no hope of a future payback from the kid. Will the parents still love and care for their child? If so, why? Their love for their child is not conditioned on future profits to be made from him. They love the child for his own sake and for their own sakes. Because the time now that they have with him is limited, is it not all the more precious? My examples are clearly oversimplifications. Along the way, Greg and the parents may have their doubts, but I'm appealing to the intuition of the reader to demonstrate that we do understand what it is to do something for its own sake and not for the sake of something else, such as monetary profits. In Greg's case, being liberated from the pressure that he has to be successful at his piano playing, does it not give him the freedom to pursue it in whichever way he likes, instead of the usual path of classical pieces and graded examinations? In the case of the parents, knowing that their son is not going to live past 5, would they spend that time ensuring he learns his multiplication tables well, or would they prefer he learns to love, laugh and play? There is a liberation that comes from failure and a joy from doing things for their and our own sakes. Besides, who knows if Greg might become so proficient as to be able to perform publicly, dare I say it, for money, or that the boy goes on to live a long life. After all, doctors have been wrong before. Hope may spring eternal, but setting aside unrealistic expectations can liberate us to then pursue our endeavours in our own way. Not being chained by the demands of utility, by the profit motive, is itself a source of freedom. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? If no one sees pictures of your holiday at the Dream Beach Resort, did you go there? If no one hears your music, reads your writing, admire your painting, or marvel at your dance, did it happen? Yes, it did. You heard it. You experienced it. Even if no one but Greg ever hears his music, he has heard it, and for his own sake, he wants to perform it well. For his own pleasure, he can choose the pieces he wants to play. Instead of Mozart, he may want to play Meatloaf. He can be sovereign in that way, to just be in the moment and to do what he wants for its own and for his own sake. Does sovereignty mean we have no worldly cares? No. Bataille refers to what is in excess, what is left over after we have satisfied our necessities. But once we have satisfied our necessities, would it not be a mistake to then go after more and more necessities when he has already been satisfied? If you have sated your thirst, would you want to drink another gallon of water? That would be a form of torture. Would we choose to remain in our prison cells if the cell doors were thrown open? For the job holders, the workers reading this, you may feel that having to work is unavoidable as you need to earn a wage that keeps you alive and provides you also some creature comforts and savings to secure your future. Indeed, all that is important, but given that we devote so many hours of our existence to it, perhaps even to the neglect of other important things in our lives, we should demand that our jobs require skill and be meaningful at least in parts to be a source of happiness, citing Hebron. We should demand that our job requires some of our skills and be meaningful at least in part to be a source of happiness, citing Hebron. As Arendt has articulated, the regularity of labour gives us a baseline satisfaction, and the work where we create something more permanent gives a more intense though fleeting joy. Our jobs should also give us opportunity to take action, in the sense of speech, to propel the larger endeavour of the cooperation, which ideally translates to a service to our wider society, and also allows us to carry out deeds resulting in achievements which boost our self-esteem. How can we be in the moment in our jobs? Bataille talks about how we should make work into play, writing, "He is not work that is performed, but rather play." We have to find joy in our jobs, the way we enjoy ourselves when we are playing. The joy of play is not just something we get in the future and result, but even as we play, we find it fun and meaningful. This same joy of play is something we need to bring into our activities, such as work, so that we can be in the moment. Our jobs should also be something worth doing for its own sake. We have to find jobs where we find the work meaningful and not just sell our time doing work we find meaningless and perhaps even downright harmful. It need not be a trade-off between decent wages and meaning. We need both. In conclusion, why does the concept of sovereignty, which is so simple and obvious, seem so radical? Is trying to be sovereign selfish? It can be if all we are concerned with are ourselves. However, we are also concerned with others, and the happiness of others also contributes to our happiness. Our lives are intertwined with the lives of others, most immediately our families and loved ones. But even seeing the suffering of strangers stirs up in us an empathy that wants to alleviate their suffering. We literally feel pained by their pain. If anything, it is the pursuit of accumulating more and more for ourselves that is selfish, but yet that seems to be the way of the world. What is normal and accepted to be what we should do? If we care about the state of the world's spirit by trying to plumb the depths of our existence through living authentically and sovereignly, how is that selfish? Is it not the opposite? where one is expanding the horizons of our humanity, and in that way for all of humanity. If you would like to support the Philosophical Bachelor, you can do so at worldwideweb.patreon.com/philosophicalbachelor. Thank you.